So, all right. So, Ray, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Mark. My name is Ray Ibarra. I'm president of the local ITSMF chapter, and I'm also on the board with the ITSMF USA. I am a salesman for a company called Mantech Solutions, and that's a pretty good introduction on me.
All right, great. And I'm Mark Galligan. I also am on the Los Angeles local interest group of the IT Service Management Forum. I'm the group's secretary. I am a principal at a company called Simplicate IT, and I'm also a practitioner. And I think the reason we're having this meeting today is to, number one, try a new avenue by which we can reach our clientele and other practitioners in IT service management. Then also hopefully talk about a subject that I don't think I've ever heard discussed before. Ray, have you heard this one be talked about before in any great detail?
No, I have to honestly say it's never been talked about, at least in any of the meetings I've been in or any of the private discussions I've been in.
Certainly. And so what we're talking about is what we'll call channel management. And that's basically is just how the work comes into the IT organization and some things to think about in terms of, well, how many channels should you have? Should the work just come in any way? Do you want to manage them? Do you want to kind of define them? Do you want to limit them? And that is the topic of the day. Do we want to do a plug for the IT Service Management Forum of USA?
Yes, Mark, go right ahead, please.
Oh, thank you, Ray. Well, again, so one of the real benefits I've found being a member of the IT Service Management Forum is you get to hear from people who do the job, practitioners, some of the challenges and some of the solutions that they have developed in their job or over their career, and what has worked, what hasn't worked. And as I always use when I have my conversations, and just like you today, anything you hear today that is worthwhile, you're more than welcome to steal it and make it your own. And conversely, at these other meetings, I will hear ideas and I will steal them and make my own. So it's a great way to get good information from people who are practitioners, who have solved problems that you may be currently facing. And conversely, you may have solved problems that the other people are trying to face. So it's a great way to share ideas and information. So.
Absolutely. Mark, and if I could add one thing to what you just said.
Certainly.
The other thing that's critical is most of us all work in different industries. So something that may be adaptive for one industry may have to change slightly for another given industry. Just slightly, or maybe a lot, or maybe not even applicable. But the point to this is that these are just ideas that'll help you think through things and problems that you have today or obstacles that are standing in the way of you getting forward.
Perfect. So there we go. We have I think it's a good segue and a good overview of the IT Service Management Forum. There's a national website, and do you know what it is off the top of your head?
It's ITSMF USA.com. .org.
So ITSMFUSA.org, and you'll be able to find out what's going on in the group. You'll be able to find out local chapter meetings, a lot of online meetings, and it's a good organization and worth a check out, I would think. So with that, taking work in, I think the next item was, well, how does this relate to the other IT service management practices that exist? And I think it is, ironically, the company I'm working for today is going through a large consolidation of different ServiceNow platforms. They're a ServiceNow customer, and they have one very, very large corporation. It has 4 subsidiaries, and each one has their own ServiceNow, and they're trying to consolidate them. And they're going through gathering the technical requirements, and this is what it would be for an incident, and a request, and a problem, and a change, and maybe a project, other types of works. But nowhere do they talk about how this work comes in. And I think the reason to have this conversation, talk about channels and how many should you have, or does it make sense to limit how they can? How does the organization take in work? That's kind of like the idea. And right. I have worked in a number of organizations that took in work through, 8, 9 different ways. Some of them they weren't even aware of. which sounds kind of odd, but it's just they'd have other work come in from other departments, like right. And inevitably, there's an audit finding, and somebody has to address the audit finding, and it's due in 2 days. What are we going to do, right? That sort of thing. So I have a PowerPoint here. I apologize for the PowerPoint, but I thought I would share one organization's look at how they do how they intake work. And Ray, I'm going to share my screen so you can see what
Please.
I'm talking about, and hopefully comment so I don't keep running on here. So
I didn't want to cut you off, Mark, but I think to your point, I think some of the analogies could be cleaned up a little bit, and that's okay. But I think you're going down the right path. So
right.
let's take a look at this. And there are a multitude of ways to get work into a company in terms of where you're working with the service management aspect of this stuff. And one way is the standard way, which is through the opening up a ticket, if you would, through your system, to do it that way. Another way to do that is if you've already opened a ticket, you thought the problem was resolved, it has not been resolved, and reopening the ticket. Another way is to again, there are a myriad of ways. If you're working with a sister division, they may have a backdoor, which is not a surprise, to get the work into them because maybe your company has a specialty or their company has a specialty in a given arena. Maybe it's just to make up something here, it would be something like wireless. Right? Either your company or their company have the wireless specialty. The other thing might be that they're getting things through a very close partner, i.e., maybe it's a customer, but you work and take work from them. They give you work, and you're getting work from them. And you need a way to do that, track that, and make sure that if you're going to get paid for it separately, you could track that as well. But there's a multitude. But go ahead, let's walk with your slide.
I'm going to go to this slide because I can actually read it. So that probably might be a good thing to do. So this is an organization that I've worked in the past. I believe I have covered up any of the names that would allow them to, that would protect their identity, if that makes sense. But in this one, they had a number of them. They had email, phone, right? So somebody could send in an email. It's called the service desk. A self-service capability, which was basically the client could create their own record or their own ticket. IM, so Link, Skype, Teams, IM, or some sort of IM capability. They could leave a voicemail. They had two type of walk-up services. They had a Genius Bar at one of their large campuses, where people could kind of go up to it at the work site, and then also field services for remote and smaller locations. Mail Listen was an email into a particular email address that would parse the email and try to create the work order or the order for them. And it was a pretty good broad set of things. Wasn't a crazy number. I think I've got 9 here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's Mark counting how good. Oh, event. I forgot that one, which would be from a monitoring solution is what that kind of meant.
Mark, give me an example of an event. I know what it is, but the audience probably would like to hear.
Certainly. Okay, so say you have a monitor that monitors, I'll pick my favorite, a certificate, an SSL certificate, and it's looking for it to looking for its expiration date. And right, so usually at 30 days, the certificate will start writing to a log that says, okay, I'm going to expire in 30 days. And the next day would say 29 days, 28 days, so on and so forth. And when you get down to when it's only 4 days remaining and it's become pretty clear that this certificate has been forgotten and nobody's going to address it, you might want to generate an alert to your operations center to say, hey, this certificate's going to expire in 96 days via an incident ticket, right? Why don't you get the requisite people on a phone call and have that certificate renewed before it expires, so that way you don't have a potential either degraded service or an outage. So basically, it's just a monitor. It's reading, getting information. It says, hey, here's an exception. I better alert somebody. And it sends that payload of data to a ticketing system. And then ticketing system generates the appropriate incident, maybe a request, and routes it to the appropriate team to get the work done. Is that fairly concise?
Very, very good. Thank you, sir. Just thought it might be good. And
Sure.
I knew you had a good example of it, so thank you.
So disk space is another,
Yeah,
good one.
that's another good one.
Disk space. Yeah. Hey.
There's a long lead time to order that now, so you better have a good
Well, there is
reporting structure.
Clean up stuff off the disk. But basically, the idea is you stay ahead of the call rather than follow the call. So
right.
But anyway, so I always like this example again. This was a lot of smart people at this organization. The one problem that they had, and these all make sense, was this one here, the self-service create your own ticket. And the reason I highlighted this one was, and this is probably an example why you might not want to have this as a channel, is that you'll notice in the 12-month period of time, they've got almost 7,700 tickets through this request. The challenge is the way it worked is they only got it to the right work group in one assignment 45% of the time, right? And so because the way this work entry method was set up, there were no real required fields to be filled up. You'd get who asked for it, but you wouldn't necessarily understand what application they were using. It was very free form. There was a few nominal fields. So it would have been hard to get from this ticket necessarily what the issue was, right? But one thing you'll notice is that 8,500, almost 8,600 of these tickets required, 2 or more queues, right? So the first guy got it, says, hey, this one isn't mine, passed it on to another team. They looked at it. Maybe it was theirs. Maybe it wasn't. They sent it on to a third team, right? They'd figured out. And so a couple things going on in that situation. Number one, the client who submitted the ticket isn't getting their work done maybe as quickly as possible. In other words, we've elongated the amount of time that it takes to do it. And then number two, you're triaging it several levels into the organization, right? So it's not like it's come to the service desk. The service desk can ask questions. They can create, if you will, a well-formatted incident or a well-formatted request and send it on to the appropriate team. Now you may have system administrators, maybe project managers, maybe DBAs, application developers starting to do this sort of thing, right? Gets even crazier. 4 to 5 queues. 631 of these cases got bounced around 4 or 5 times, and this is definitely elongating the amount of time it takes to satisfy the initial request or incident. And then number two, so that client's getting frustrated, and then now we've got DBAs handing it to application developers, handing it to systems administrators, handing it to security analysts, things like that. And the cost of getting this ticket assigned to the right group now is probably $100, right? With all the time and effort, back and forth, phone calls, sending emails, that sort of thing. It really has. And then the next one is 115 tickets. Took more than 5 attempts to get to the right group. So I thought I'd share this simply as an example of something you may not want to do, and then also maybe lead into a conversation on maybe having fewer queues is better than having a lot of queues, right? Because one of the things you have to manage is intake. And if you have 9 places to manage, it's not that it can't be done, but it's going to be more complex than having maybe 3 methods of intake. And I'll share some
Mark,
of these.
Before you do that, just a couple of thoughts for you. One at a couple of companies that I was providing services for in my career, what we ended up doing was doing a triage. So everything was funneled through one group. They would then make the determination of the priority. They would make a determination on who was going to touch it and why they were going to touch it. And it cut down on going to multiple places. You don't cut it out completely because sometimes it's so complex. You need 2 or 3 departments to help you with it. But they would basically have 24 hours to triage to get this thing. Is this person? Is this thing going to live, die, or do we just need to band-aid it and send them home with a little pat on the butt? Those decisions would be made relatively quickly, and people would know through the process what was going on, where they were within the process, who had it, and when they could expect it back. And if there was more investigation that was going to be required, because that added money, time, and more importantly, it was going to be stuck in the queue for a lot longer than it was.
Right, and that's a very good point. And I think one of the tenets of an IT service management organization is having kind of like a single point of contact,
Right.
right? And in most places that would be the service desk. I think a couple of things. Number that may have most organizations experience is probably the best way of saying it is. So number one, in an environment where you have like a self-service catalog or employee self-service or something like that, the whole idea is you pick an item or service that you're requesting, and then that just kicks off a workflow. And because that workflow is pre-orchestrated, you don't need to go to the service desk, right? The IT organization knows what the item or service is. They know the workflow to orchestrate it, and you don't have to take it to the service desk. The other thing is, I don't know about your experience out in the field, but what I've seen over the last number of years is that the service desk, just like every other organization, an IT organization, are always seen as cost centers, never as profit centers, right? So the management of the organization will try to squeeze, if you will, as much work out of that expense, if that makes sense. I hope I'm not saying that too coldly, but basically they will oversaturate that organization's ability to keep up with its own demand, right? So I know you hear things about, the average speed to answer is too long. A lot of abandon rates. I don't know if you've ever been involved in any of those. I know I have a lot of times, and that, I think the other thing is, so people get frustrated with having to wait for the service desk to answer the phone. And then, of course, the agent gets frustrated, too, because they're really working hard, right? They've developed a lot of knowledge. They'll have a lot of, knowledge behind their work, a good knowledge base. They'll have a lot of just tribal experience, for lack of a better term. But those guys get beat up, right? And so that's why we have these other channels, right? So
yep. So that you can work through that. Just as a note, we're about 5 minutes left in our scheduled time. So I think this was a good start to what we wanted to do. I think I'd like to get some feedback from our listening audience, and then tailor this for the next one a little bit more to some of the open questions, and then we can maybe close this one out.
I think that's a great idea. I think if you've listened to this and you have thoughts, please include them. We'd love feedback on this. Good, bad, and different, or constructive things that we can take to help make this better for you. And with that, we will go from there. So any parting shots, Ray?
Just thank you, Mark, for coordinating this and doing all the hard work, all the heavy lifting. And to our listening audience, thank you for taking the time and, giving us an opportunity to share some knowledge and information with all of you. Thank you all.
All right. And again, this is Mark Galligan saying thank you as well. Look forward to your comments, and we hope to do more of these in the near future. So hopefully you found this useful, and we can do it again. Thank you again. Bye-bye.